How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Steven Talks, and this is part 2 of me talking about becoming a metal fan. If you haven't seen the previous video, or part 1, just a quick recap. About a year ago, I decided to do a deep dive into metal. I discovered Iron Maiden and fell in love with them and thought, you know what? I've never really listened to metal before, so I'm going to take a deep dive into it. So, became obsessed with Maiden, became obsessed with Judas Priest, worked my way through all of the 80s metal that there was, hair metal, metal, all kinds of other metal. And by the end of the year, I would say between Halloween and Christmas, I discovered Merciful Fate and King Diamond and became obsessed with that man. So that was where I left off, and that is where I'm going to pick up now because I would say right around December, about the time that I was really big into King Diamond, I kept seeing these covers of these specific albums. And I'd kind of seen these covers throughout my life, but I'd never really investigated them. And those covers were from a band that I also was used to seeing its name everywhere. They have a very specific logo. And I thought, you know what? I'm finally going to check out this band and finally see what all of these album covers actually sound like. And that was when I fell in love with Death. That's right. A band called Death. How am I getting this in here? There we go. This was my intro into death metal. I had spent my whole life really not being a fan of death metal, really just thinking like, I don't know, man. It's the barking vocals. It's super fast. I'm kind of a laid back dude. I don't know if I'm really big into this. I was wrong. I heard this album, their very first album, Scream Bloody Gore, which is an incredible album. This is one of the first death metal albums ever made. Death was essentially one guy named Chuck Schuldiner who was a brilliant musician, not so great with people, which meant that for all 7 of Death's albums, they all had different lineups. There were some people that they were on multiple Death albums, but just there was a lot of, miscommunication. And like I said, Chuck was not very good at dealing with people or even really speaking his mind. So, yeah, but because of that, it made every album have a different feel to it. Like I said, Death had 7 albums, and the first 3 are just your good old meat and potatoes death metal. The second album, which is one of my absolute favorite metal albums of all time, is Leprosy. This is one of the few albums where it sounds exactly like this cover looks. It is ugly, it is brutal, it is glorious. Just for a good time, please check out Leprosy. But after the first 3 albums, Chuck decided that he really wanted to expand the sound of Death and get a lot more technical, work in kind of weird time signatures, a lot more crazy guitar work and stuff. So by the 4th album, we have what is really, if I had to pick my favorite Death albums, it really would be a tie between Leprosy and this one, Human. Human is the first of the technical Death albums. Incredible music here. I love this album to death. I didn't mean to do that. But Chuck, again, would make 7 albums with Death, And then sadly, the man would pass away from cancer in, I believe, 2001. So he left behind a legacy that very few people get to enjoy, which is a perfect album legacy. Of all of Death's albums, all 7 are fantastic. There's not a dud. They're all great. And that is a rare thing to say. I mean, even huge legacy bands, as awesome as they are, they got a couple of duds in there. Death has none. So if you've always seen that logo, if you've seen these album covers and you've been curious, check out Death. So after really getting obsessed with Death, I become laser focused. So I found this book called Choosing Death, I believe is the title. And it's all about the history of death metal and grindcore, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But I became fascinated. Like there was something about death metal that was doing something to me, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And so because of getting into Death, I started getting into Morbid Angel, and the next band, which all of these bands were right there at the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean right down there in Tampa, Florida, in the mid to late 80s, a studio called Morrisound Studio, a guy named Scott Burns, who produced some of the classic death metal albums ever made. And this band is the Great Obituary. And this album right here, Cause of Death. Now, I know I've been showing a lot of records and stuff like that. Cause of Death famously has been out of print for years on record. You go to Discogs or eBay, and if you have an original copy of it, they're going for hundreds of dollars. That is until they just recently announced that it's being reissued. That is coming out sometime toward the beginning of August, and you best believe I pre-ordered the hell out of that. So my record of Cause of Death is on its way. This is my favorite death metal album of all time. Now, Obituary, they are one of the most dependable bands in the subgenre. Like, they play metal, man. They don't play too fast. They're just heavy, and they're awesome. Their vocalist, John Tardy, has the most magnificent guttural growl that you have ever heard. I love Obituary. There's not a bad Obituary album. They're kind of like Death. I know a lot of people, may have some that they don't like. I've never heard a bad one from them. I really haven't. I enjoy anything and everything that Obituary has put out. Now, we are thoroughly invested in death metal at this point. And I'm starting to come to a realization that, well, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. To back it up, for the last many years, I have dealt with extreme anxiety. It's something that just kind of materialized out of nowhere. I would be out in public or I would be at work, just doing my normal thing, and suddenly I can't breathe. I start to get dizzy. My palms get sweaty. I'm like, am I about to pass out right now in front of everybody? Like, I don't know what's going on. And I start getting extreme agoraphobia. And I just feel like I need to make sure that I know where all the exits are. If places start to get too crowded, I'm getting claustrophobic. I'm getting overwhelmed. And I don't know why. I have no idea why. But luckily, through, going to the doctor, finding medication that helps, I start to get a handle on it. But I start listening to death metal, and it has an unexpected effect on me. And that is, it calms me down. It takes away my anxiety. And I know that sounds crazy, and you would think like if you're hearing, just blah, 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 and all that, like that would give you anxiety. And I thoroughly understand that. But for me, all of that chaos is calming. The best thing that I can compare it to is people with ADHD are more often than not prescribed Ritalin. And, Ritalin just puts you right up here, man. And people that have ADHD, they're already right here. So when they're right here and the Ritalin comes in and does this, it evens them out, And that's what listening to this aggressive music does to my anxiety. I think that, when I'm listening to this music, there's so much going on that my brain has to pay attention to it, and it has to figure out what is going on with this. And in doing that, it doesn't have time to become anxious. It's just, its focus is not on, oh God, what if this happens? Its focus is, what is this? And it was glorious. It was a glorious feeling that I could get in the car, pop in a metal CD, and calm down. If that sounds ridiculous to you, fair enough. But I'm just being perfectly honest. It really helped me. So I am thoroughly thankful and in debt to metal music. And all right, speaking of chaos, now for the last few months, like I said, we've gone into 2026 now. I'm, deep into death metal. I'm listening to all the old school stuff. There's so many albums in that subgenre that I love that I just don't have time to get into. But at Christmas, my friend Jason, who he himself is a metalhead, and he's been kind of like my sensei in all of this. He gets me a stack of CDs for Christmas, and he's like, these are all bands that you need to know. And one of those CDs was the album Prowler in the Yard from a band called Pig Destroyer. And so, all right, I'm going through these CDs. I'm going to check them out. I pop in Prowler in the Yard, and it's just like, whoa. Like, it is intense. It is loud. It sounds insane. And I got about maybe 5 or 6 songs into the album, which for that album means about 5 minutes into the album. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, this is a lot. So I think maybe I'm going to put this on the back burner for now. And I'll come back to this at a later point. And I did, because like I said, this is about the time that I'm still balls deep into King Diamond's wailing falsetto. So hearing Pig Destroyer was a bit abrasive. But then, maybe a couple of months after that, I discover one of my new favorite bands. And that is the great Napalm Death. And I hear this album. I hear Scum. Well, I hear Scum, and then I hear their other album, Utopia Banished. Now, Scum right here, this is the birth of grindcore. Well, maybe one of the births, but I'll get to that. This band has been around forever. I would say probably, I think officially they got together in maybe 79 or 80, something like that. They are still going to this day. There's not a single original member of that band still going. The vocalist Barney, I think he came in around the third album. Shane, I think the bassist, he came in around the second album. For their debut album, there's literally a different lineup from one side of this album to the next side. But this is such an incredible album. It is low budget insanity. It's the sound of a bunch of dudes in a room who are like, let's play some metal, but let's play it fast. Let's play it as fast as we can. Famously, there's a song on here called You Suffer that's about a second long. Yes, how can you not fall in love with that? But again, something about this insanity is just piquing my interest and soothing my brain. So I'm like, well, all right, let me start looking into grindcore. Grindcore, like I said, it's fast. It's a cathartic release of emotion is the best way that I can describe it. Whether that is joy, anger, sadness, whatever. It is fast. It is loud. I get that it is a form of music that not a lot of people really enjoy. Fair enough. I have absolutely fallen in love with it, which is where I am now. After this whole long journey, I am now nestled comfortably in the world of grindcore. So, after discovering Napalm, I find the other album that is the birthplace of grindcore, and that is Horrified from Repulsion. This actually was, I think, recorded in 1986, and I don't think it came out until, the late 80s or something like that? This, for the longest time, was it from Repulsion. This was like one of those one and done bands. Hello, Mouse. I know, buddy. Thank you. Mouse is my cat, and he likes to bring gifts, and he's just brought one. Thank you, buddy. Back to the Severed Head. This album, again, just like Scum, is low budget. The dirty, grimy sound of a bunch of dudes playing really fast, and it is incredible. That also sent me into one of the greatest grindcore albums ever made, a band called Terrorizer. Terrorizer released World Downfall. I'm getting a lot of there we go. There we are. This was another one and done album for the longest time for Terrorizer. They were a band that was together, and then their drummer Pete left the band to go join Morbid Angel. And Earache Records, right after he left, were like, hey guys, we'll give you money to make a Terrorizer album. And they're like, well, we're not Terrorizer anymore. And they're like, oh, well, you want to get back together and make an album? So they got back together just to make World Downfall. And then that was it. And what they did was they made an incredible album. This album is so aggressive, so sick. I can't recommend it enough. So I was loving all of this old school stuff that I was hearing. And, I was digging the fact that it was fast. I was loving the aggression. But it wasn't until I heard this album. Hiss. Actually, this album. There you go. I'm representing Hiss today. This is an album from a band called Wormrot, and the album is called Hiss. This was the first time that I realized that in all of the chaos that grindcore is, you can create art. And that's really the best way that I can describe it. This album is God tier. It's a masterpiece. It's an amazing album. Wormrot is from Singapore, I believe. If you've seen photos on the internet over the past few years, there's a really famous picture of a band performing in a room. They're not on a stage. They're just on the floor with the audience. And right there in front of the singer who's screaming in a microphone, is a sheep. Like, the sheep is just gazing fondly at this guy. And that was Wormrot. They were playing a gig, and I guess there was a sheep outside, and it wandered into the gig, got its way up to the front, and is just like, hell yeah, guys, this is awesome. So that photo kind of brought attention to Wormrot. But this is the last album that they've made. Like I said, it's phenomenal. There's so much artistry going on in all of these songs. It's very much a grindcore album. Grindcore is famous for having super short songs. You're lucky if you get a 3 or 4 minute song on a grindcore album, it sounds like you're listening to Bohemian Rhapsody. It sounds like it takes forever. Most songs are going to be right around a minute or less. And so after hearing that, I thought, well, wait a minute. I need to go back to Pig Destroyer. Like, now that I have heard all of this and I'm really into it, I need to give Prowler in the Yard another chance. So I did. I popped in Prowler in the Yard. This time listened to it all the way through. And I was like, there it is. Like, it was like that scene with Danny DeVito where it's like, I get it now. Like, I loved it. Prowler in the Yard is the sound of pure insanity. And so I was like, well, I need to hear more from Pig Destroyer. And it was the follow-up to Prowler in the Yard that would become my personal favorite grindcore album of all time. At this point, that could easily change as the next few months or years go by. But at this point in my life, this is the album where I was like, that's it. This is the one. This is number one. Let me find a way to show this on YouTube without getting in trouble. Let me hold it like this. The album is Terrifier. This, like I said, is the follow-up to Prowler in the Yard. Oh my God. I can't even begin to... This is so awkward holding this, but I can't begin to tell you how amazing this album is. It's, again, the sound of pure insanity, but oh my God, it's amazing. Just listen to it. I could say a whole bunch of adjectives and superlatives, but it's not going to be until you listen to it that you go, oh my God, he was right. So that leads me to, I'm going to end the video with a band that I am into right now who I think are phenomenal. They just sound evil, but they sound evil in the coolest way possible. And that's a band called Full of Hell. And I got into Full of Hell because I heard this album, Trumpeting Ecstasy. First of all, oh my God, look at the cover of this album. That is sick. That is sick, man. You can't beat that cover. But yeah, another album where the album sounds exactly like the cover looks. It is amazing. And their follow-up to Trumpeting Ecstasy is an album called Weeping Choir. And Weeping Choir is a masterpiece. There is, their songs are intense, they're short, they come in and do their thing. But about midway through on Weeping Choir is a song called Armory of Obsidian Glass. And this song is, I think it's like, 5 or 6 minutes long? But it starts as like this kind of slow dirge. And I think you hear the weeping choir in this song because the singer will scream a line and then all of a sudden these like ghostly wails will come up. And it just does that for a while and does that for a while. And it kind of is hypnotizing in its own way. And then the song changes and it goes into this euphoric ending where it just sends chills down your spine. That was when I was like, I love this band. This band is phenomenal. So there you go, man. About a year ago, I was singing the praises of Iron Maiden, and now fast forward to this moment where I'm singing the praises of Full of Hell and their beautiful, evil, chaotic music. So who knows where I'm going to go next? That is the beautiful thing about discovering a new genre of music, is that there's so many avenues you can go down. There are still so many bands I haven't discovered yet, and I'm excited to do it. So thank you for listening to my personal journey into metal music. And thank you for listening to me talk again. And we'll talk again another time. See you later. Take it easy.